Right, so my guest for today is a Philippine comic legend. He's the creator of the horror crime comic series Trese, and that will actually be available on Netflix next year. Very, very exciting stuff. Don't let his name fool you, because he is big time. Welcome to the show, Mr. Budjette Tan.
Thank you very much. Hi, Anton.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. So for those who don't know, you are actually in Denmark right now. So we have a 7-hour difference. And before we talk about the comic and everything, why are you in Denmark? When did you move, and what's the story behind that?
Yep, I'm in Denmark because I work for Lego. No, I do not build the models. I wish I was that talented and creative. I work for the Lego ad agency. So we are the team that comes up with the commercials that you would probably see online and on TV. So yeah, it was amazing to find out that that yes, creatives from the Philippines have a chance and opportunity to work not just in Lego but actually at the Lego home office. So I am based here in Billund, Denmark, which is where Lego was founded and created. All those years ago. So I've been here 4 years with my family, with my wife and my little kid, who might come in any minute now because I'm in his playroom.
Oh, okay. Does he get like a lot of free Legos because you worked? Wow, that's the dream.
It's not necessarily free, but it.
But he gets like
Yeah,
first dibs.
yes, he definitely does that.
Yeah,
He has
wow.
that. He gets a lot of the toys, and because my wife works in licensing, which is in charge of merchandise. So yes,
For Lego also.
for Lego. So he's got. If I
Ah.
open this closet now, it's filled with his Lego shirts and pajamas.
Yeah. In Denmark, people say that Denmark is like one of the happiest places on earth. Based on your experience actually living there, how true is that?
They're
Mm.
actually number two now, based on a new survey.
Who's
So
number
it's
one?
very number one now. I think is Norway or Sweden.
Oh, okay.
So it's funny because a chocolate company here now has a campaign saying we need to be number one again. When I first heard about it, that Denmark is the happiest, has the happiest people on earth. Again, there's this thought of like when you come here, are they like hi, hello, happy, perky people? Some of them are, but they're not all like that. And reading up on it, and somebody actually wrote a book about it, A Year of Living Danishly, written by a British author who came here and is still here actually. And reading about other things about Denmark, and of course after living here, I think the reason why they're happy is because they have less things to worry about as compared to, I guess, in other countries.
Yeah.
So less things to worry about, I guess it's because they get a lot of support from the government.
Mhm.
So if somebody loses, if you have a job and of course you're paying your taxes, if you lose your job for whatever reason, you actually get support from the government for a certain period of time. Medical requirements, going to the hospital, checkups, and things like that.
Yeah.
That's all it feels like you're not paying anything, but
Yeah.
you are paying for it because of your taxes, right? And of course, it helps like in a company like Lego and like most Danish companies, work ends by 4 p.m.
Wow.
So,
What time do you
so
start?
yeah. So compare that to the Philippines, where I come from advertising,
Yeah.
where work ends really late, or overtime is the culture, is the norm, and you go home when the sun rises. So it's a big shift. So suddenly you're stressed because I have so much time now.
That's a good
So
thing to
I
be
think
stressed about.
yeah, exactly. Big problem. And in a way that contributes to the happiness, because
Mhm.
work ending by 4 p.m., it means they have more time to socialize outside of work. So they are the epitome of like a work-life balance,
Wow.
compared to, even like a country like the US, which is also very, OT driven and like, performance based. You got to deliver
Yeah.
this now type of culture. So yes, I guess that's why they're. And I guess, yeah, comparing it to the rest of the world, if you interview a Dane, an American, and a Pinoy, in terms of stress level, the Danes would have smaller things to be
Yeah, for
stressed about.
sure.
So that then gets interpreted as, oh, they're very happy people.
I think it's actually happiness by design because there are less things to worry about in the structures in that country where compared to obviously my experience would be the Filipinos. We know that the Filipinos masaya talaga eh. Very, very happy people. But I think it's more
Yeah.
of Filipinos are happy despite everything compared to
Yes.
you have
Yes.
less things to be unhappy about.
Yeah. I think yeah, when you get that same questionnaire and you ask a Filipino about it, obviously that the Pinoy will talk about all of the things that he has to complain about.
Mm-hmm.
But I get the weird feeling that whatever that global survey isn't asking, the flip side of the question, which is, again, if you ask a Pinoy, yeah, there's traffic, yes, there's all this and that, but yeah, we're happy with
Yeah.
what we have.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad reality. But then you mentioned a while ago that you actually worked in advertising as well in the Philippines. So you were part of that culture. You experienced that firsthand. And at the same time, so you're doing that by day and at night you were writing comics. I'm curious to know how did you first what gave you the confidence to actually do that? Because from what I hear, advertising is already it's like more than one job already. Like the demand of that job. So how did you even think of, what, I'm gonna get to do these two things, juggle them at the same time?
Well, before advertising, I did try to start comics. I tried to write my own comics, tried to be, I was part of a group that tried to start our own comic book business. So it was a first love in a way. I mean, even if now that I think about it, as far back as college, even my college thesis was about comic books. So
In Ateneo, I also studied in Ateneo, by the way.
okay, oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I graduated from interdisciplinary studies,
Mm,
and I wrote about the Sandman. So even as far back as that time, I had a great love for comics. And if I had the chance back then, had our wonderful grand plans succeeded back in the 90s, I would have been just doing comics all throughout my life. But comics didn't work out. I needed regular pay. Therefore, I got into advertising. And again, it was a friend of mine who got into the ad agency, said there was an opening, and I tried out and I got in. And I think what advertising instilled in me was more discipline in finishing the work, respecting the deadline or being a slave to the deadline, right? You write a script, it's due tomorrow, the shoot needs to happen on the weekend, but the client rejects your idea, but the shoot still needs to happen.
mm,
So you have to come up with an idea in less than a day so that you have something to shoot on that weekend. So that's what I feel advertising, especially in the Philippines, hones in you. This ability to, oh no, there's a deadline. We need
yeah.
a new idea now.
It's like
Um,
making pressure out of diamonds. It's like making diamonds out of pressure pala, baliktad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Good point. So, but that love for comics never left. After work, going to the comic book store was a way to, relieve that stress. And on the weekends, that's when I like binge read, my favorite
Yeah.
comic. So, and again, even when I was in advertising, I had tried to continue doing comics, but I realized that it was just taking up a lot of time as far as I was concerned. So there was a period of time when I stopped. In 2005, Kajo Baldisimo sent me a text message. And as a background, Kajo also worked in the sister ad agency where I worked. And we had worked together before on other comic book projects. So it was around that time, as I was saying, where I had not done anything comic book related. And out of the blue, Kajo sends me a text message and says, Budge, gawa tayo ng comics. And he said, I want us to make a monthly comic book. And I texted back, that's impossible. Because again, of the lifestyle I was just
With the
telling
ad
you.
agency job, of course.
And I said, and he said, if you can give me a script, if you can give me a 20-page script, I can finish it in 20 days. And I was like, I was so skeptical about it. And he said, do you have anything? Just give me any script. And I found an old script which I could never ever finish. And it was about an NBI investigator named Anton Trese, who got
Yeah. Oh, when I researched about it, I got to see some interviews, and so of course her name's Alexandra Trese. Her grandfather is Anton Trese. Medyo nasabi ko, sayang. Because I don't really see, being someone named Anton, I don't really see any superheroes. Like Anton is a common name, but we don't normally hear it as the main guy, the superhero. But then I totally agree with how you made it a female instead. We don't see enough females, and it gives a more, I would say it gives a more badass vibe to the whole story, because we've heard the story of the male, being the hero a lot of times.
yes, yes. But yeah, even and now I'm forgetting. Anton is actually the name of, he was the name, that was the first name of a villain from Swamp Thing. And I'm now blanking on what his last name was. And as you might have read, the name Anton Trese didn't come from me. It came from a friend of mine, Mark Gatella. And that was actually the name of a character we created for a radio show back in the 90s. So, but back then he was just a host. He was our mysterious host who told ghost stories. But I love the name. I love the name of Anton Trese.
Yeah, it sounds
nice. Yes.
No bias.
Anton Fausto also sounds like it could be a bad guy. It could be. Let's see, Anton. Yeah. But so it was just there was a great mystery behind that name. And yes, as you read and as you said, eventually that all led down to cool. We have I sent Kajo the Anton Trese script, and he drew 1 page in 1 hour. True enough, as he promised.
Wow.
He did it, and his grand plan was he will draw it during his lunch break. So I have this image in my head that while Kajo is eating a sandwich, he's drawing a page of Trese.
Yeah.
And that's how we did it for the first year of Trese. It's actually in book 1 of Trese, the original Anton Trese sketch, and he already had the that hairline, the devil's haircut, as Kajo puts it. And then there was just something that clicked in my head, and I said, really cool. This looks great. But we've seen too many tough guys. And I just, on a whim, I just texted Kajo, what if Trese was a woman? And Kajo texted back, that she will be so badass, is what Kajo texted me. And maybe not less than an hour, I exaggerate. Within that day, he sent me a sketch of Alexandra Trese. And when I got that sketch, I just said, yep, that's her. That's going to be her character. And it just made all the difference.
Yeah. It's really nice and how natural it was, because iba nga siya. And then I would imagine now kasi medyo mas uso na yung feminism and giving women more roles. We can see that in the, how in Avengers there was a scene that it was all the women. So I can say that it really comes from an honest place. But then the last thing I wanted to ask about, it's interesting that you guys made this comic, which is a creative job. It's a creative sort of field. And usually when we hear these stories, these success stories of people that do something else, it's usually Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of school and then just went all in. If you had the chance to, have a redo, and knowing the success that you have now and it's going to be adapted by Netflix and everything, would you have done it differently, or would you still have gone the quote-unquote traditional route? You study in Ateneo, let me get a quote-unquote traditional job, some kind of safe, and then still do this comic on the side?
I think I would still have gone down that route, because, and this is just me talking, right? There's a big difference between somebody out there, and there are a lot of examples of people who have dropped everything and just said, I'm going to do only comics. And there are a lot of them, a lot of Pinoys as well, who have succeeded in doing that, right? In my case, I'm not so sure doing that for me would have led to where I am now or to where we are now. Like I said earlier, I think working in advertising made me learn new skills. And aside from writing the story, everything I learned from advertising, I got to apply on how to promote Trese. And even in the craft of writing, I mean, the biggest advice, that people would give is like, the top 3 advice is keep writing, keep reading, and get a life or experience life, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not out there experiencing life, what have you got to write about? So I think that's what also having a job allowed me to do. I'm sure there have been many other ways, that can be done. But in my case, yeah, I think the path I took helped me learn and get to know the people and being able to achieve what we've achieved now.
Yeah, it's good. There's not just one way to success, and I would guess it's like the sexier way, and na parang I just dropped everything, just went in on the dream. But then there are a lot of paths to that dream. Now let's talk about Trese. It's gonna go on Netflix. How does it feel? If I'm not mistaken, is this the first Philippine animated series that's gonna be on Netflix?
I think so
I haven't
too.
heard of any other what is the feeling like? Not just from when you got a call or parang this might happen. When you knew that it's actually gonna happen and you're actually making history. What was the first emotion? What was it like?
It's I I think I couldn't feel it. Maybe I think I felt numb. I don't remember like this feeling of like wow, it didn't feel that way. It just and again the way I found out was actually through chat, through FB Messenger. It was our producer, Tanya Yuson, who informed me, it's finally happening.
Yeah.
So I keep my running joke with Tanya is how I wish we had that Hollywood moment where we were all in the room and the phone rings and she gets it and she goes,
We got it.
we got it, and you have that, high five, hugging, and whatever. But that didn't happen to me, to me, Kajo, and Tanya. It was just like a message saying we got it, and so I sent that to Kajo, and we like emoji, emoji, emoji.
That's the new way na. Especially now that everything's gonna be virtual. Did you imagine that when you were making, the comics, when you were writing the story, were you hoping that it was going to be an animated series, or was your intention just for it to be a comic?
I would be lying, of course, if I said we never thought of it that way. But on that day, on that month, we were creating Trese. On the day I got the first printed photocopied copy of Trese, for me in Kajo, it was like, hooray, we finished something that's just for us. We finally finished a piece of work that I liked and he liked, and now we were ready to share it. And it was a piece of work that didn't need to get approval from a boss, a client, and 20 other people, right?
That's the ad agency. Parang that's the effect. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
And it was a story that that I've always wanted to tell. So, and it was like I've always wanted to do a Batman story. I've always liked ghost stories and horror stories. And I love superhero stories. So in a way, that first issue of Trese allowed us to do something that we've always wanted to do. And the first time that thought of like, can this be more than a comic book?
Mm-hmm.
One of the TV commercial directors that we worked with, he sent me a text message one, and this was at the time when Trese was still photocopied comics. We have not yet found our publisher at the time. He sent me a message saying he likes Trese. He wants me to meet with one of the local movie producers and maybe turned it into a movie. So I said, sure, let's meet. But one of the things and they were very nice people. They were great to talk to. And, of course, you start dreaming of like, oh, what happens when it becomes a movie? One of the things that made me take a step back for a bit was there was something in the contract that said that when the movie gets made, they get 100% absolute control over what happens in the movie.
Uh-huh.
And at that time, we had only written maybe 5, 6 issues of Trese.
Yeah.
And we had more ideas for what can we do, what is this character all about. If you think about it, back then at 6 issues we had not even written the origin of Trese. But eventually there was a lot of talking and a lot of meetings, and it just kind of died down. It made me think, okay, the next time I will talk to anybody about the possibility of Trese becoming a movie, I hope that we at least have the universe, a solid universe, which is funnily what happened. I put that in the back of my head, and after book 3 came out, which is the origin of Trese, that's when I get a text message again from from out of the blue, from someone I've never met. I get a text message from Tanya Yuson. And she said that she's a producer and that she was working in the US, back home in the Philippines, and she's looking for new stories to turn into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So we met up because she had read book 3, and she thought that was the first Trese book. And she said she really liked what the story was all about. Do we want to get into a partnership and develop it into a movie? And again, I said, sure, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And all throughout that, so it took them 7 years, by the way. Tanya Yuson and her partner, Shanti Harmain, took them 7 years of pitching Trese, bringing that comic book to Singapore, Japan, Europe, the
Wow.
US. They did the rounds. And obviously, they also met with producers in Manila, right? Studios and producers in Manila. They did the rounds, bringing that comic book to, festivals and meetings in studios. But throughout that time, it was like, I think Kajo had his feet on the ground more than I did. Maybe my feet were like flying a foot off the ground every time I get an update from Tanya saying, "Oh, we're meeting with this director," or "We're meeting with this producer," and I'm like saying, "Really? What did he say about the comic?" Yeah, throughout that time, it was like we would get these news and updates, and Kajo would always say, "Oh, that's cool. Let's do the next story." And I guess this long rambling story of mine, I guess the point is that as much as the dream of getting an anime series done, or a movie or a TV show for that matter, is always, that fluffy cloud above your head, we still go back to, let's do the next issue.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep doing the comic book. There was one time I told Kajo, "Oh, that thing I was telling you about, it didn't push through. The movie's not pushing through." Or there was even talks about a TV series. "Oh, it's not pushing through."
Mm-hmm.
And Kajo told me, "Well, that we don't have control over that, but what we do have control over is the comic book. So let's just keep doing the comic book." So yeah, I think that's what we did. We just kept doing that, and eventually a door opened. Netflix Anime opened up their doors and said, "We're looking for stories from other countries." And Tanya and Shanti pitched it, and here we are now.
Yeah. It took a long, I would say that was a very long road, but then I'm very excited that we're here. Personally, me, I didn't really grow up reading that much comics or watching that much anime, but then to know that there is something that's gonna be on Netflix that we can sort of call our own. We can really call our own. It's about Philippine mythology. There are they use landmarks in the Philippines. It even mentions Ateneo also. So all the more I'm gonna like it. But then now that it's in the hands of Netflix, how are you sure? What are you doing to make sure that the true essence of the story stays, and it's gonna be depicted truthfully, and the way you really envisioned for it to become?
It kind of boils down to trust right now. It's great that they got Jay Oliva on board to be the showrunner and executive producer. Me and Kajo were able to talk to him for a day. We got to answer his questions. But ultimately, it's like it's up to them on what is the best way to adapt Trese from medium to medium, but at the same time, keeping in mind a global audience. And the output of which is, I think, fantastic. I have had the chance to read the scripts, and I think that a long-time Trese reader will enjoy it and will still be surprised by some of the things that they will see. Because again, when you've read the book, you have this, thing. When you read a book and you watch the adaptation, you're already waiting. Okay, this is the chapter where this happens or that happens, right? So it's really great how they were able to still follow the beats of the story, but then they will surprise you. And we've already started to see a glimpse of the art or the animation. So yes, most definitely they are sticking or keeping very close to what is Trese all about. Jay and his art director Jojo spent a week, 2 weeks in Manila. I mean, they've been back in the Philippines, past couple of years. But when they came home for this particular trip, it was really to go to the places where Trese, to the actual places where the cases were done, were set. So they did that before sitting down and writing the scripts. So they wrote the scripts in Manila. They wrote the stories, the story arc in Manila, for that matter. So it was really like immersing themselves, and the writing team was also Pinoy. So I think that also allowed it to be, again, staying true to what the book is all about, and it's not a foreign lens trying to interpret the book.
So it's still gonna be the comics. It's in English, but there are some Filipino words. It's still gonna be in that way that it's not gonna translate tikbalang or kapre, for example. The names will stay true to the original names. Okay.
Yes.
That's something I get worried about sometimes. If it's Filipino topics, Filipino content, and then it's gonna be brought to the global stage. Sometimes what I notice is that nasa-sacrifice yung pagka-Pilipino so that it's going to cater to an international audience. But it's good to hear that that they went to the Philippines, they really got involved and immersed in what the story is about. Now I wanna move on, still connected to Trese, the role of magic. When you were growing up, I know that you were told all the stories about Philippine mythology. Were you also led to believe Santa Claus? Like, did you have that the tradition of writing letters to him, getting gifts from him every year?
No, no. I found it funny. I mean, of course. Sorry. I was about to go off on a complete tangent about Santa Claus.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, it's okay. What about Santa Claus? Is there
No.
do you have like a personal experience or anything like that?
No, I mean, I just wanted, on the bit about Santa. I mean, and usually that is one of the first, what do you call this, experiences of kids, or like the knowledge of, there's this magical being that brings you gifts, but you need to be nice and not naughty, right? Mm-hmm. So no, I didn't have that, because we were the types of kids that stayed up till past midnight to open our gifts. So yeah, I mean, compared to other kids, we never had that ritual of writing to Santa. But as far as magic is concerned, I was your typical kid where I grew up where, my parents would tell me about ghost stories. My dad was the one who told me about aswang. walking around. We used to live in this neighborhood where we were one of the first few houses in that subdivision, and then we passed by a punso. So my yaya at the time told me, "Oh, you have to say tabi tabi po," and I said, "What's
Yeah.
that?" So I guess to answer your question, magic was alive in that sense, where I ended up believing that, yeah, there could be a little person living in this termite mound, or that I need to keep the windows closed and not get off the bed because there's an aswang outside the window.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of magic that I guess I grew up with more.
Mhm.
Since I was the only child for the first 5 years in my family, so I would end up hanging around the adults table, and that's where I heard stories about, yes, aswang and ghosts. My mom would often talk about these miracles, these miracles done by saints. My uncle, who came from Bacolod, got into this whole ESP telepathy
Mhm.
movement. And one Christmas time, he was telling us about how to you open your third eye and have telekinetic and telepathic powers and things like that. So yeah, I guess it was a family that was had a lot of stories about magic and
Yeah.
miracles.
And did you believe these growing up? Like, did you believe them to be concrete truths?
There was, even as a kid, there was part of me that was a skeptic. So as much as I loved it and would know it and want to learn more about it, there was always a part of me that didn't was always like, yeah, skeptical and going,
Yeah.
is it really true, right? Or when there was a period of time when I got heavy on like paranormal investigation, reading up on paranormal investigation. So the thinking behind that is that there's no such thing as magic. There's always a scientific explanation for something. It's just that we haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
So as much as, yes, I believe in, that there are creatures and occurrences that cannot be explained, there's a little part of me that's thinking maybe there's a rational reason for it and we just don't know it yet.
But then with all these topics of magic and supernatural, do you think that there are other values that can be learned from these? Because we know that you're not supposed to leave the windows open, safety reasons. You're not supposed to step on an anthill because there's a nuno. There are I can see concrete reasons on why kids should believe these magical things. But beyond that, I also know that you're a part of a web series that talked about the history of Philippine mythological creatures. What are the other values that you get from teaching these to the kids and discussing them?
I think it's just, well, on a very shallow level, it is stories meant to scare kids to make them behave,
Behave, yeah.
right?
Kind of like
Uh,
Santa also.
Kind of like Santa, or now there's this, and this is my first time to learn about, a couple of years ago, the shelf on the elf.
The shelf. I haven't heard of this. Shelf on the
The
elf.
shelf, I think it's a US thing, or like it came
Uh-huh.
from a book, but essentially, on the days that lead up to Christmas, as an elf, and what parents do is they buy the toy. It's like a 12-inch tall elf, little boy dressed
I
up like
got
an elf.
scared if it was 12 foot. Laki.
Yeah, that would make the kid behave, right?
That,
If it's a
yeah.
12
That would
tall.
make me behave also.
Yes. And part of the thing that they do is they would move it around the house. So every time the kid wakes up, the game for
Oh.
the kid is, oh, look for the elf, which is usually on a shelf. So you have to put it high somewhere in the house. And the whole thinking behind it is he is watching you and making sure you're a good boy or
Okay.
girl so that you get your present. And you are supposed to not touch the elf, because if you touch the elf, it means you will not get a present for Christmas.
Okay.
So
Okay,
anyway,
that's neat.
so a lot of these stories are like stories that will make you behave. If you boil it down to its core, it's all about don't talk to strangers, don't go out at night, or be kind to people who need help, because they might be a powerful diwata that will grant you, treasures and things like that, right? But uh, I don't really know on a deeper level. I guess it's just great that we have stories that we can call our own. And again, let's take the example of Santa, or the shelf on the shelf, the shelf on the elf, the elf on the shelf. It's a very Western kind of story that's already shared by millions of other kids. But the moment, just imagine, every other kid there knows the story of Santa and the elves. But can you imagine a little kid suddenly telling the story of, in our country we have duende, and the
Yeah.
duende live underground, and they also have gold treasures, and so suddenly it's like, I've never heard of that. And it just makes you go, wow, that sounds more interesting than the old man who lives in the North Pole making
Uh-huh.
gifts. So it just makes you feel special that you have these stories that you can call your own. But the moment you do share it with the rest of the world, then it's also something fascinating to share. And I think that's the importance of being able to share and continue to tell our own mythology and our own folklore. Um, and I guess if you dig deeper or peel away the layers or unpack it, or whatever term you want to use, there are things there there are core values that we probably still carry over from generation to generation. But I feel at its shallowest, it is something that is ours, and it's something that we should proudly share.
Now connected to Philippine mythical creatures, do you have a favorite one?
Oh, a favorite mythological creature. Um, I guess the one that scared me the most was the manananggal. So that would be top of mind.
So you would say the scariest one is actually your favorite?
I guess so. I mean, I only because that's what opened, you know, my mind to, oh, there's this and there's other. Are there more of them out there? Growing up, we had our fair share of vampire movies and werewolf movies and The Mummy.
Mhm.
So it was like learning about the Manananggal. Again, it was like, wow, really? We've got that? And she looks scarier than Count Dracula, who looks like he's going to attend like a ball or something.
Yeah.
He's
The
in a
half
nice suit.
body pa lang eh.
Yeah,
Nakakatakot na kaagad eh.
yeah. He's always fashionable for his time, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's it. I mean, I think about the thing about I was about to say the tikbalang. The funny thing about the tikbalang is the way the tikbalang has been portrayed in popular culture is very different from how it's been portrayed in our folk tales. And I don't know if it was because of that Dolphy movie where he was a tikbalang.
Okay.
He came out in a movie called Once Upon a Time, and he was a tikbalang there. And of course, he's the good guy. And there's this moment of him transforming into a white tikbalang, and then the kids get on his back and they like ride off, and they escape
Yeah.
from the bad guys. I don't know if I'm remembering this right, but that image of the tikbalang, funnily enough, seems to have influenced how the tikbalang has been portrayed in not just in Trese, of course, in a way, even though the first time Maliksi appears in Trese, he was a troublemaker. He eventually becomes one of the good guys. In Arnold Ares mythology class, the Tikbalang there's a Tikbalang portrayed as a good guy, and there was also that Tikbalang, there was that wild, untamed Tikbalang that they needed to stop. And same with several other comic books out there that have started to portray the Tikbalang as this noble creature. So, and I guess there's also something about this idea of a horse, right? Of that in movies the horse and the good guy has always been like a tandem.
Yeah.
So, but again, going back to our folk tales, the Tikbalang has been a troublemaker or has supposedly caused people to go insane and lose their way in the forest.
Yeah.
At least and I only found that out when I started to do research about the tikbalang. There's also this, and now that it comes to mind, there's a period of time if you go to Makati in Greenbelt, when it wasn't this overdeveloped mall complex, there were metal sculptures of tikbalang scattered around the parts of Makati. And one of them was a tikbalang sitting down playing a flute. There was I think there was a tikbalang wrestling with a man. So they were like, fighting each other. There were others, and I recently Googled the artist to look for his other sculptures. But yeah, those sculptures were like removed because they built more malls. But again, as a kid growing up, I'd be walking around the mall and you'd see these metal sculptures of these, tikbalang, and it just gets stuck in your head of like, what an interesting looking noble creature. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, that all gets into the mix of creating the stories we have now.
For Philippine mythology, we know that there are a lot of values with it, and that it's sort of, it's our own. It's something that we can call our own talaga as Filipinos. Do you think that it's something? This is actually a question from one of my listeners. When he found out that I was going to be interviewing you, he wanted to know, on your opinion, do you think that Philippine mythology should be taught in schools? Because I usually, diba, galing probinsya yung mga kwento na to, I only kind of know it, but I was born and raised in the city, so I don't really know the Philippine culture as much as I would have wanted to. So do you think schools should teach this?
Yep, absolutely. I think there was a whole discussion thread started about it. You might have seen the Aswang Project, which was the docu-series that interviewed me and a bunch of other people. So yes, I think it is important that Philippine mythology be somehow taught in schools, because again, the same way history is being taught in schools, it would only benefit us to learn about what did we used to believe in, and make that a point of reflection to what do we believe in now. Whether or not it allows us to look back and see what mistakes, was it a mistaken belief, or we might actually be surprised and find out, the things we used to believe and now think that we're not following those rules or those guidelines, turns out we do still follow them. And it was just handed down from generation to generation, and turns out, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
So yes, most definitely we should, somehow have a venue, a subject where these things can be taught.
And with Philippine mythology, this is actually a new idea I got from reading about your comics and researching the different talks you've been on, the interviews, is that, again, it's something that it's our own, and it actually didn't necessarily come from 100%. All of these came from the Spanish when they colonized us, or the Americans. It's something that's really our own, because there is this. I would have to admit, I'm part of the problem sometimes na kung galing Pilipinas, kung locally made, naisip ko parang it's lower quality. Gusto ko yung galing sa abroad na lang. And we can also see the same when it comes to our films. As in, we know that the standards you have for an Avengers movie is much different when it comes to anything locally made. So with that challenge, with that reality in mind, is it something that you're actively, consciously trying to break now? With Trese, it's gonna be on Netflix and everything, that we deserve to have the respect that all these foreign films, foreign stories have.
Interesting question. So let me try and answer that question. I will go off on a tangent. And
Go ahead.
If I don't answer your question, you need to say you're not making sense, Budge.
No, I want to know your honest reaction to that to the statement I just gave.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. What I wanted to talk about was ube. Ube is something that we grew up with.
Yeah.
It's a pasalubong that somebody brings home from Baguio. And there was a period quite recently somebody started putting it in pandesal, and suddenly it's
Yeah.
like, oh, ube pandesal is the
Oh wait, so
thing.
that reached you? I mean, you got to hear about all the ube pandesal because for me it is a
Yes.
2020 thing lang na uso.
It floods my feed.
Yeah.
My Twitter is still following what's
Ube.
trending in the Philippines, so it just
Mm-hmm.
lets me see what's happening. And I wanted to talk about ube because maybe like what 3-4 years ago, it became like the U.S. food critics was calling it the new matcha. If
Oh.
matcha became the thing, if salted caramel became the thing, if Greek yogurt became the thing,
Yeah.
there were like, food critics talking about ube is going to take over, the food, what's hip in food in the US. I don't know if it did, but there were, it felt like there was that period of time when it would pop up on my feed talking about, this New York restaurant has a new ube something, and this restaurant in San Francisco has something. So I guess my point is, at the end of the day, it's ube, right? It's how much time and effort did people put in to make sure this is high quality ube, and somehow that allows you, if put in the hands or in the mouths of right people, it will travel. Okay. I need to get a milk. So yeah, let me get a milk first,
Go
and
ahead.
then we'll continue the ube discussion. Ube is something that we've taken for granted until suddenly you do something new with it, right? Put it in pandesal, which is something that they've been doing. If you think about it, street vendors were doing that for the longest
Yeah.
time and putting it on like monai, right? But now it's in pandesal, and suddenly it's like, everyone's gotta have it.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, if you think about it, we've had these stories for all these years. It just needed to be packaged in a new way and put into the right hands of people. So taking it into, do we have, we normally get asked, do we have world-class artists? Do we have world-class storytellers? And we do. Obviously, the mere fact that we have so many Filipinos working for Marvel and DC, we have the talent. The mere fact that we have so many Filipinos working in the animation industry abroad, right? We've got Filipinos in Pixar and Disney. They're heading projects there. They're going to be directing their own stuff soon. So we've got the talent. So it's just a question of making the inroads so that the talent can be seen, and can be spotted. The internet has made is the biggest blessing and curse that creators and artists now have. So as far as reaching a new audience is concerned, we have it. It's now a question of how much time and effort is the creator, the artist, the writer putting in his work. Because just because the internet is there doesn't mean, look at my work, love me, give me money, throw money at me. Because aside from you, there are scrolling down, there are 100 other choices to look at. So what makes your story or your creation stand out from the rest? And that's the tricky balancing act that you need to keep in mind. Not that you have to keep comparing yourself to what's out there, but it's also more about, make your story unique by putting yourself into your creation, whatever it may be. And then put it out there. And if it doesn't work, then take a step back and then you just learn from it again. So I think Filipino stories, more importantly, are stories of myth and culture. have a great potential to find a bigger audience out there. And as you going back to your question of should it be taught in schools, we have a big audience in the country already that's not being reached by our own myths and legends. So if we can get a new generation excited with our own stories, then even more so it will spread out there, I think, and that a lot of people would appreciate it. And as a last anecdote, even before Netflix, Pinoys started to use Trese as their pasalubong when they would go to visit relatives abroad. So we have started to receive, even years ago, we started to receive email from US, Canada, Sweden, the Middle East, from foreigners. So we're like, oh, my wife is Filipina and her sister brought this comic book and we read it, and they are intrigued and absolutely entertained with our mythology and they want to know more. So I think it's just a matter of telling our stories, finishing telling those stories, packaging it and putting it out there, finding the right place so that people can see it. And I think the world will love it and embrace it.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see the effects of this. I feel like it's really about time that Philippine talent gets recognized, not recognized abroad. I think the more important one, the more urgent one would be for it to be recognized here. That Filipinos respect and value fellow Filipinos work, not because because I'm supposed to support local, but because they want to and because the quality is there. And with that, I just want to know, what is your advice? What can you tell all the aspiring artists, especially comic artists and the writers? What is your message for them?
Oh, keep doing what you're doing. um, I think that's what sometimes that seems to be the easiest and the hardest question to answer. To new artists, the biggest curse of a new artist is wanting to perfect the work. And in this great desire to make the work perfect, they never get to finish the work. And giving yourself some kind of deadline is what will help you get past that curse of wanting it perfect, because it never will be. So the first advice is start the story you want to tell and then finish it. The desire to perfect it, it's hard, but you should get over it, because once you've finished your first story, you will do better in your next story. The amount of energy you put in writing and rewriting or redrawing your story, you need to take that same amount of energy and pitch it to the world. Mm-hmm. So it's not as some people get lucky in terms of they uploaded it and it went viral.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen. So in other words, when you, in the case of, let's say, social media, just because you've uploaded it on Facebook where you have 1,000 followers doesn't mean you get to sit back and relax, and that means your work will travel. Post it everywhere else. Put it on Twitter, put it on Instagram, put it on TikTok. I don't know. But you need to put it in front of your new audience. And that's how you get more people to know. And if people like your work, then they will share your work. Mm-hmm. Right? The tricky part about being in the Philippines, of course, is there is a dream that everyone's running after of, can I make a living out of this? And of course, it's very hard. Me and Kajo still have day jobs. So if you think about it, we're still really not making a living out of doing comics. But there are guys out there who can and who have been doing it. So it is possible. There are more and more platforms emerging right now. For example, like Webtoon. Some of the comic book creators that put their stories in Webtoon are actually making enough money that they've quit their day jobs. And if Webtoon is not for you, then who knows? Maybe you're the guy that needs to make the Pinoy online comics platform that will let other comic book creators start monetizing their work. But before you even get to that stage, finish the work and tell the story that you want to tell.
All right. Thank you very much. And before I let you go, I just have one last question from another listener. This one's from Justin. He's a big fan as well. He's asking if did you draw any inspiration from any particular titles in the Japanese manga scene? And if ever, are there any specific works or artists that you look up to? So from talking to the future artists, in your perspective, naman, looking when you were starting this out, what were your inspirations for this?
As far as anime, not necessarily the manga. Ghost in the Shell was I would say a big influence in in writing Trese. It was showing on cable back in 2005. So funnily enough, and I only found out after Kajo was watching the same show. I guess everyone was watching the same show. So yeah, Ghost in the Shell with Major Motoko. As the main character. So maybe that's also part of what was in the back of my head, that in Ghost in the Shell, she was leading a team of tough guys, right? But she was the major, she was the main character, and it was taking a look at what happens in the future when people become too reliant on robots and artificial intelligence and technology. And what crimes are people starting to commit because of that? So I think watching those stories inspired me to take that same scenario, and then I flipped it and then said, what happens in a country where magic is used and abused by people?
Yeah.
And what kind of crimes do they start to commit?
Yeah.
And I think that's the parallel there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm very, very excited. Me, as well as a lot of Filipinos, a lot of your fans are really, really excited. I can't wait for when it's gonna come out on Netflix, and who knows, not just for it, but for everything that's gonna follow, for all the other Filipino artists, all the other comics, all the other stories that are there, but are just waiting to be told the right way and packaged the right way. All right, so with that, thank you very much, Sir Budjette. I'll let you get back to your son now and play with him, and all the best there in Denmark, and God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anton. Thank you to everyone listening, watching. Bye.